Welcome to Stuff I Wish They Taught Me, the podcast all about learning a little bit about a lot of things. I'm your host, Alex Long, and I hope that today you get to walk away learning about something that you wish you knew a lot sooner. For more, please visit our website at thebalancedlearner.com. What's up, everybody? I want to start off today's episode by inviting you all on a trip down memory lane. See, when I was a kid, my brother and I shared this computer, and back in the day, your computer would be your monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, and it would be attached to this giant thing we called a tower, a computer tower. I know some people still use it. It's probably about, it looks about maybe 3 foot tall. Actually, I'm exaggerating. It's probably like 2 feet tall. You would put it on the floor. And, you would put in your floppy disks, your CDs, anything you want. It was very exciting to have a computer as a kid. The internet, we would have it plugged in directly to the computer, and you would make sure that your mom or dad's not talking on the phone because that would actually disconnect the internet. We would actually have to wait a little bit for the internet to start, and it was all called dial-up. But that's a story for another day. So I remember back then when we had those computers, the mouse wasn't wireless, and on the bottom of the mouse, it had like a little compartment where it had this tiny little rubbery plastic ball in there. And I just remember that we would always take that out and we would clean it with a Q-tip and with the alcohol swab, because that little plastic ball or that little rubber ball actually, is what's responsible for actually the mouse's sensitivity and the way your computer tracks it. And the reason why we always had to wipe it down and make sure it was clean is because we played a lot of computer games. We took advantage of every chance we got when it came to the computer games. And one of the computer games that we loved to play was Sims. For those of you who don't know what Sims is a game that I spent hours on, and it's where I learned how to be an interior designer, an exterior designer, a fashion professional. I definitely learned about different jobs. I learned about, safety, right? Making sure you had a fire hydrant and also a fire monitor in every single room. But anyway, if you've never heard of the game, the gist of it is that you control this character and you control like literally everything about their lives. So you're responsible for, buying them a house and getting them a job. And, there were a lot of cheat codes. There was a way for you to just make money off of a cheat code. But my brother and I, once we started doing that, it wasn't fun anymore. So what we did was we made sure that, they were able to go, and you would go on the computer in the game and you would look for jobs through a newspaper. It was really fun. I know nowadays that might sound kind of weird or boring, but it was really, really fun for us and definitely took up a lot of our times. But in order to get a job, you would have to be working on your attributes or your skills. So what are these things? Like every character has a bar. Like, are you artistic? Are you more mathematical or an English type of person or an engineer? And the way you would do that is by doing different tasks in the game. For example, if you wanted to be like a chef, you would have to improve your cooking skills. So you would have to make sure you're not always buying food and you're not always ordering takeout, like I said. You would have to cook, and then your cooking skills will go up. So anyway, I was in the job market for my sim, and I was like, wow, I want to get these really nice jobs. So what I would do is that I would always make them do a bunch of different tasks. They would play chess by themselves. They would, practice speech in the mirror, like these little minor tasks, so that I can just fill up every single attribute bar I most possibly can for my sim. And you know what's crazy? I don't know if they still do this, but this was a crazy concept that it taught me as a kid. Eventually, my sim passed away because in all of those little health bars that I was talking about, they had other stuff like health, personal hygiene, happiness, stress, things like that. And for my sim, the stress was always super duper high. And as I got older, I realized that it's probably because I made him do so many damn things, right? He was, cooking, going to work. He slept like maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. And I remember when he had passed away, it literally said, "Your sim has passed away due to high stress." And I remember sitting there thinking as a kid, man, what the heck? Spent all this money on this game and I just want to make sure my sim stays alive and has a good job and things like that. But looking back, I think it really taught me the importance of balancing everything out and teaching me that, something called burnout is really real. If you've listened to our previous episode, you know that we emphasize a lot on maintaining a well-balanced lifestyle but also prioritizing all of our time and all of our most important priorities. Now we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and look at a few details and a few techniques to increase our productivity, relieve some of our stress, and most importantly, making it feel like these giant tasks that life throws at us can be conquered by taking the baby steps first. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Pomodoro Technique, a technique that I have used throughout my undergraduate and also my graduate career. This technique is designed to help anyone who is either working on a project for work or for school or for anything in general, or even if you just need to find a way to strategize the time that it takes for you to sit down and focus. We're going to be talking about where it came from, how you can use it. Most importantly, we're going to break down how to use the Pomodoro technique in 6 easy steps. So go ahead and open up your notes, open up your laptop, open up your ears, but more importantly, open up your minds. And hope you guys enjoy listening to today's episode of Stuff I Wish They Taught Me. How many times have you found yourself trying to complete like an essay or studying for an exam and you're just grinding through all of the chapters and then you decide to take a break? And when you take a break, sometimes it ends up being much longer than expected. And you look back and you're stressing out and you're like, oh man, I only have this short amount of time to complete my task or to do whatever I have to do. Don't worry. If this is you, you're certainly not alone because I feel like every single person has been through this at least once. I know we talk a lot about scheduling on this show, and we talk about making sure that you input time throughout your days to take these breaks or take these rests, but have you ever considered an actual strategy to that? A strategy that I have been implementing and that I have learned about that really helps me out is called the Pomodoro Technique. For those of you who don't know, Pomodoro stands for tomato in Italian. And that's because the person who founded this technique, Francesco Cirillo, was going through his undergraduate degree and had a lot of difficult time finding proper ways to study and to manage his time. So what he did was he used a kitchen timer that was shaped as a tomato to time all of the intervals in which he is focusing and studying and taking short breaks. So ultimately, to give you guys a general understanding of this method, it's basically setting time aside to actually study, but also setting breaks as well. See, most of us, when we study, we either study for an hour or two, and then we take a 10-minute break, and then we study for an hour or 30 minutes, or even 2 hours, and then we take a 20-minute break. And there's just a lot of different types of breaking strategies and a lot of different amount of times that you're taking breaks, where sometimes it could get overwhelming, it could get intimidating, and when it's inconsistent, it can get really inefficient as well. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes when we don't have a rhythm, we find it hard to really focus. We find it really hard to get anything done. So if that's you, especially during this time, during the pandemic, when things are kind of different, especially now that we're in an online learning environment, or hey, maybe your workload has doubled since the pandemic, go ahead and try this method out. And I hope that it really helps you out because it's definitely helped me out. I want to take this second to just add that I know sometimes a lot of us feel guilty for taking breaks. Whether it's breaks from our homework or our studying for an exam or from a project or even in the work environment when we're taking a break or a lunch from our work. This technique is designed to help you not feel so guilty about it because the longest break that you could possibly take will either be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but there's different ways you can do it. But generally speaking, I'm going to start off with kind of the Pomodoro Technique 101, and that is going to be a 6-step process. Step number 1. You want to make sure either at the beginning of the day or right before you start studying or working on an essay or project, you get a list and you make a detailed list as far as what needs to be done first. You could list up to 3, 4, 5, 6 tasks, but you want to make sure you keep it realistic as well. Let's say you have a 20-page paper to write and you only have 3 hours and you still have to do all of your research, you still have to outline, you still have to write the paper. Is it really realistic to make your list just with one task and all it says is write a 20-page paper? No. What you might want to do is step 1, start an outline. Step 2, add research to the outline. Step 3, start drafting the paper. Notice how it gets more specific, and that kind of guides you in the right direction. Some people argue that it's going to be easier to write down your list starting with the highest priority, the most important thing first, and going down to the least important things. Some people might say it's easier to start with the things that might take the longest amount of time. And some people would start off by saying that it's a lot easier to start off with things that take a short amount of time first because you get to cross those things off earlier and then you're going to build a rhythm by the time you're throughout the middle of the day. Either way, it's totally fine. The most important thing though is that you just have that list of what needs to get done. Sure, it's easy to say, oh, you know what? I have an exam coming up next week for chapters 7 to 10. And just writing down on your list, study for exam. Do you see where the problem is with that? Maybe if you have 3 days or a week, you could say study chapter 3 and break that down into even more details. But don't forget, step number 1, make a list. Now comes the fun part. Step number 2, which is setting your Pomodoro timer. Usually, you would set this timer to 25 minutes. And you don't need to set anything fancy. I have been using my cell phone. There's actually an app right now in the App Store called Focus Timer, and it does the same thing for you, and it's shaped as a tomato as well. I think it's built off of the Pomodoro technique. But anyway, you want to set a timer to 25 minutes, okay? 25 minutes on the alarm. Don't put it on a stopwatch because you're always going to be looking at it. Just set a 25-minute alarm on your phone or on a timer and just put it away. This is very important. Put it away. Don't always look at it. Don't worry about it because when it's in your sight, you're always just going to be thinking about that instead of focusing. Now, before you start your timer, you kind of have to take a deep breath and do a mental check-in. A mental check-in is you being mindful and committing to staying focused and completing your task. So let's say, for example, from earlier, your first task on there is starting an outline on your 20-page research paper. So go ahead, set your timer. If you're doing it on your phone, what really helps for me is I put it face down and I put it either behind me or on the other side of the room so I don't pick it up and start getting distracted. No matter what, unless it's an emergency, of course, but even if you hear a notification on your phone go off or if you hear someone gives you a call or something like that, you know that for the next 25 minutes, you're committing it to yourself and you're not going to be distracted by those things. Step number 3 is going to sound so basic, but it's so essential. And step number 3 is work on that task. Like I said, for the next 25 minutes, you're not doing anything except for working on that task that you wrote on your piece of paper. Step number 4, when the timer goes off, go ahead and check your list and see where you're at in the list. Obviously, the first 25 minutes, you're probably not going to get a whole bunch of stuff done. But this step is really critical when it comes on a little bit later. Maybe after you've been studying for an hour or two, when you start getting tired, when you start feeling like, oh man, I don't get something, you could always look back at your list and see what you finished so far. So I'm going to reflect a little bit back on this step a little bit later, but I want to go ahead and go to step number 5. So step number 5 is setting a new timer. Once you check your list after the 25-minute timer goes off, you want to go ahead and set a new timer, but only for 5 minutes. What is this timer for? This 5-minute timer is your break. Now, it's very important that you take this 5-minute break. It's up to you if you want to get up, if you want to go stretch. I always recommend leaving the place that you're actually doing the work, but making sure that you're not going off to do something like, for example, if you are having company over and you're studying and it's really important that you're studying and they're all hanging out in the living room, it might not be a good idea to just go out there 5 minutes because you might end up staying there a little bit longer. But you know your self-control a lot more than I do. But I always recommend that you take this very, very short break. Step number 6, when that 5-minute timer goes off, you're going to set a new timer for 25 minutes. And then you're going to focus for that 25 minutes. So those are the 6 easy steps. Make sure you guys pay attention to each and every single one of those steps and why it's important. But step 7 is a bonus step. Step 7 is extremely important because eventually you might get tired of taking these 25-minute breaks. You might get tired of focusing for 25 minutes and then taking these 5-minute breaks. So, step number 7 is very important that after you do the whole entire cycle 4 times, so after you set a 25-minute timer and then a 5-minute rest 4 times, so a total of 2 hours, you go ahead and set a new timer for 30 minutes and then you take a 30-minute break. This will give you a chance to do things like, oh, I need to eat, or oh, I need to take care of that other errand. Or hey, sometimes like a 30-minute break does a lot of help for you mentally, because when you're sitting there for hours and hours and hours and grinding out and working out, it does a lot to your mental body and how much you're able to retain as far as the information you're trying to study. So it's very important that you take that longer break to kind of just hit that little refresh, right? So I'm just going to go over again real quick the 6 steps and the bonus step. Step 1, make a list, decide on a task. Step 2, set the Pomodoro timer to 25 minutes. Step 3, commit to the task, work on it for that 25 minutes. Nothing else matters during that 25 minutes. Step 4, when the timer goes off, look at your list and see how much you've got done and how much more you need to do. Step 5, set a new 5-minute timer and go ahead and take your well-deserved break. Step 6, set a new timer and do it again. And of course, step 7, after 4 rounds, you want to make sure you take a much longer break. Whether it's writing a paper, studying for an exam, or preparing for a presentation, this method has really helped me stay on task, stay focused, and has really helped me out when it comes to completing all of my goals. For me, it really helped me out because sometimes I would sit here for 2 to 3 hours a day, and by the end, I'll feel really burned out, and I'll look back and I'll just wonder what I really did. And even within those 2 or 3 hours, it was hard to stay focused. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes within those 2 or 3 hours, I get stuck on the phone, I'm Instagramming for 20 minutes, or I'm texting someone back and forth, and I remember everything they said in our conversation, but I don't remember anything that I just read for my assignment. So this Pomodoro method has definitely helped me out with taking regular breaks, having a healthy relationship with studying and completing tasks, and more importantly, having a really small victory when it comes to time management. Now I want to let you guys know that this isn't the only way of doing the Pomodoro method. For example, you don't strictly have to keep it at 25 minutes and a 5-minute break. Some people like to do 30 minutes and then a 5-minute break, or they like to do 45 minutes and then a 10-minute break. You could play around with it as much as you like. Sometimes when I complete my first Pomodoro in my first 25 minutes and I'm in the zone, you guys know when you're in the zone, when you're writing a paper, you're just typing it out and you're just providing all of this great content for your essay, or when you're studying something and you're just like, wow, I'm fully understanding everything. I'm in the middle of this really important chapter. No one is telling you you have to take that break. You could skip one break, one of the 5-minute breaks, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I tell you guys to never skip your breaks, but it's important for you to make up for it later. For example, the other day I was writing and working on this assignment and my Pomodoro went off. It was 25 minutes, but I was just like, cell phone, you need to chill, hold on a second. I'm going to skip this 5-minute break. I'm going to do another 25 minutes straight, but later, my next break, you best believe it's going to be 10 minutes. And that's exactly what happened. I did a 50-minute Pomodoro round and a 10-minute break. So you could split it up. Don't feel like you have to commit to this schedule. Just commit to the principles. Timing the amount of time that you focus, followed by timing the amount of time you take a break. And also, it's important for you to know that after doing 4 rounds, you take a much longer break so that you could take care of other things like walking the dog or eating a meal, taking a shower, doing whatever you got to do, checking in with a loved one maybe. It's important that you keep a well balance, because when it comes to handling so many different tasks and so many different things that you have to take care of, think of yourself as that sim. Think of yourself as someone with these different assignments, different jobs, different roles, and make sure you try to keep all of those energy bars and attributes that I was talking about up. Because the last thing you need to do is get too stressed out over something, get burnt out, maybe get sick, and that could even compromise your actual performance. And make sure you're reminding yourself, if you're not able to perform and give it 100%, then why do it at all? And an important way to ensure that you're always hitting your max potential and that 100% is by managing your time. And it all starts by making sure you enjoy your breaks. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. It was more of a how-to guide, and it's definitely something I want to implement into the show now that we are going through what I like to consider more busier times of our lives as we're approaching the fall season. I've never been good at saying goodbye, but something I always say is that we say goodbye so that we could say hello again. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Stuff I Wish They Taught Me. Once again, my name is Alex Long, and remember, if you want to be a good friend, if you want to be a good homie, then go ahead and think about someone that you might feel will benefit from any of the information that I shared with you guys today. Send them the episode and let them go on their merry way. If you guys have any suggestions, please go to thebalancedlearner.com and click suggestions and let me know what you're thinking. I really want to know. I want to improve, and I want you guys to be there with me. Please, if you have a chance, leave a review or a rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. And it brings me a great honor for me to say this, as I always do, to close off every episode. I told you.